So in this video, I have a very important update on a major win against a statewide ban on the purchase and possession of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Now, really quick before we jump into this video, I want to ask you guys, if you just like this video, please share it. Also, drop a comment down below, like the video. All of those things really help the channel to grow and for these videos to get out to more people. And I also want to thank one of the sponsors of this channel, which is TacPack. TacPack is a subscription-based box that delivers tactical and EDC gear to your door every single month. Every month in your box, you can get a bunch of different brands, including 511 Tactical, a 9-line, CMMG, and many more. And the TacPack box offers you two different types of tiers that you can get. You can get the standard box or the plus box. And right now, TacPack is doing something very special for my viewers. If you use the code ARMED and it's your first time ordering, you will receive a free $60 tactical box that goes separate from the box that you're purchasing. So I will leave a link down below to TacPack. If you want to sign up, it will also be in the pinned comment. Don't forget to use that code ARMED if you're signing up to get that free additional tactical box along with your subscription. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be discussing a huge win against a state ban on so-called large capacity magazines, essentially magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, and then also the permit they put in place to where you have to have that permit to purchase firearms going forward. Oregon Measure 114, which put in place a statewide permit to purchase and a magazine ban, was ruled unconstitutional and struck down in its entirety. The state court judge in this case issued a permanent injunction against this measure. The state of Oregon is currently attempting to remove that permanent injunction through the appeals process by going to the Oregon State Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals has now set a hybrid oral argument to take place in this case before the end of this month. So this is a critical case in a critical hearing that we have to discuss. Now, the case we're going to be discussing in this video is called Arnold versus Kotek. The Arnold case is a state lawsuit filed with the help of GOA and SAF, and this case challenges Oregon Measure 114 as a violation of the Oregon State Constitution. With Oregon Measure 114, the measure first requires that anyone purchasing a firearm must obtain a permit to purchase. To get that permit to purchase, the resident would need to go through a safety training course, go through a background check, get fingerprinted, show a valid ID, and then all of that, potentially the permit could be granted. Now, the second significant thing that the measure did is it created a ban on the sale, purchase, transfer, and possession of any magazines that hold more than 10 rounds after the effective date of the measure. So it had a hard cutoff on the future sale of any magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Essentially, they tried to ban all standard magazines going forward. Now, in response to that measure, the Arnold versus Kotek case was filed in a state court. In the Arnold state lawsuit, a Harney County Circuit Court judge, Judge Robert Rocchio, issued a decision striking down the entire law, finding that it was invalid. Now, in this order, Judge Rocchio stated expressly that this court is preventing the undue burden of ballot measure 114 from being imposed on current and prospective gun owners who have a right to lawfully possess firearms for the purposes of defending themselves and the state against imminent threats of harm. Judge Rocchio ruled that Oregon Measure 114 was invalid under the state's constitution and must be struck down in its entirety with a permanent injunction. But of course, this story does not end there. States like Oregon are never going to let those decisions sit. So Oregon then appealed that decision up to the State Court of Appeals. They then asked the Oregon State Court of Appeals to place a stay on that permanent injunction issued by Judge Rocchio. The state of Oregon also asked for an expedited hearing on this case and expedited briefings so that they could have this appeal move along faster. Now, in response to that request for a stay, the judges on the Court of Appeal did deny that stay request, so Oregon suffered another loss, and the permanent injunction remains in place at least until the Court of Appeals rules on this issue. The Court of Appeals did decide to expedite the hearing and the briefs on this case, and so they had an expedited briefing schedule and an expedited hearing, and now a lot of this is coming to a head. Now, the last time we talked about this case, we broke down how the state of Oregon missed some of their filing deadlines, and that the plaintiffs in this case were asking for the appellate court to dismiss the entire case because of those missed deadlines by the state of Oregon. However, the appellate court denied that request to dismiss the case, and instead the state was given additional time to file their opening brief. The opening briefs and the additional briefs have been filed and have been submitted to the Oregon State Court of Appeals. The plaintiffs have also submitted their response, and the plaintiffs state in their response to this appeal that Article 1, Section 27 provides that the people shall have the right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and the state, but the military shall be kept in strict subordination to the civil power. Rather than forthrightly erasing this right by amendment, a slim majority of voters, disinformed by well-funded out-of-state anti-firearms advocates, passed ballot measure 114 to supposedly combat a litany of overstated, undersupported, and sensationalized public safety aims. This measure is the most extreme anti-firearm law in the country and poses a great threat to Oregon residents and their right to keep and bear arms over the last 165 years. On appeal, defendants seek to upend generations of Oregon law and culture and turn constitutional interpretation on its head. Defendants have eagerly awaited this opportunity. Indeed, despite not being the subject of this appeal, the defendant's brief lays bare their goal of declaring semi-automatic firearms, the most common self-defense firearms, unprotected, thereby requiring Oregonians to defend themselves and their state with antiques, calling into question the validity of their rights. This court should uphold the Constitution as understood by the conservative pioneers who founded Oregon and affirm the trial court's ruling. Now, it's important to note that since this is a state challenge under the Oregon State Constitution, there is a different standard of review that the state court is going to use to determine the constitutionality of the state law, and also a different standard that the Court of Appeals here is going to look at. It's not the same Bruin analysis that we talk about a lot when we're dealing with other federal lawsuits. Under the state standard, the standard here in Oregon applies what is known as a two-phase test. And under phase 1, there is a determination of whether Article 1, Section 27 actually applies. And then under the first phase, Oregon argues that Article 1, Section 27 does not apply since they believe LCMs, these magazines, are not arms and they're not protected as arms under this section of the Constitution. So that is the first phase of the test. And the second phase of the test is almost looking at the public's interest and balancing that claim purpose that the state is using and what impact it would have on the constitutional right, essentially your right to purchase and possess these types of arms. Of course, Oregon in their measure 114 argues that the measure is in the public's best interest to stop these types of shootings and that the public's interest outweighs any burden on the Constitution. However, the trial court found through the expert testimony and various data that was submitted to the trial court that the claimed incidents that this law would stop included only 2 incidences in the entire history of Oregon, and there really were only 179 nationwide, but only 2 of those had occurred in Oregon over its entire history. And that is not enough to justify the public's interest to outweigh a constitutional right. Now, again, if you're confused about why these arguments are not aligning exactly with the Bruin text, history, and tradition analysis, that is again because Oregon in this lawsuit is dealing with the state lawsuit, a state constitution, so it's going to be a little bit different from what we deal with the federal side of things. However, now this case will in fact be heard in front of the Oregon Court of Appeals before the end of this month. On October 29th, the Oregon State Court of Appeals has set oral arguments to take place in this case. They state that they're going to be hybrid oral arguments. I'm not really sure what that means, but that is what they have set to take place on October 29th. And also one of the interesting things that I want to point out here with one of the interesting wrinkles in this case is the fact that there has kind of been a general aversion from the Oregon Supreme Court to want to get involved in this specific case. Multiple times when the state of Oregon lost at the trial court level on the TRO and the preliminary injunction, they filed for interlocutory appeals up to the state Supreme Court, and multiple times the state Supreme Court denied review of those issues. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Court of Appeals rules in this case, what comes out of those hearings, and generally where this goes from here, because it doesn't seem like the state Court of Appeals is super interested in this case or is super favorable to the state of Oregon. So again, we're going to be seeing how this develops. So a very important case and a very important hearing that's going to take place before the end of this month. If you can listen to those, if we're able to listen to those lives and there's a link, I will try to share that with you guys if you want to listen. And if anything else develops, I will let you guys know. Also, if you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.